In this week's episode, we're going to be looking at why increasing amounts of officers are hitting burnout, feeling like they can't go on in the job, feeling like completely disillusioned, lacking motivation, and feeling like they haven't been doing the job that they originally signed up to do. Now, it's no secret that policing is becoming increasingly difficult. The job is increasingly used by officers, and the saddest thing of all is that there's nothing in the pipeline that makes me think that policing is going to get any better. Funding isn't improving, increasing officers, amounts of officers being put in isn't happening. Mainstream media continually love to batter the police, decreasing morale, increasing public's kind of hatred of police. Unfortunately, you go on any comment where the police have done a good job and it's like, wow, the police did something, wow, the police actually turned up to a job, and then 10 people whinging that when their car window got smashed that no police turned up. It's just endemic, and I can't see any way that it's going to start getting better. So as well as the mainstream media giving police a kicking, you've also got a lack of recognition for good work from the upper echelons of policing, inspectors plus. A lot of officers will go and do a great job and their sergeant might say, well done. They don't get any recognition. It's kind of feels like, why am I doing this? Because they're not that well paid. Doesn't feel like you have a lot of time off. You miss a lot of social events in your calendar, family birthdays, Christmas, etc. And it really can get you down into a hole because you joined to make a difference. You joined to do good for the world, and it feels like nobody actually gives a crap when you do a good job. And I feel that that is one of the main reasons why officers just don't really care about the job so much anymore. And it's used to be seen as a career. It's now seen as a short-term job role. Like me, I did 4.5 years. Like, it was unheard of 20 years ago for anyone to leave before pension age because the pension was so good. Nowadays, it's completely different. Another reason why officers are feeling burnt out is because of decreasing numbers of officers, bums on seats, and officers having to go to more and more jobs, feeling like their workload's getting bigger. You've got a workload of 20 plus, you turn up to work and the CAD queue's enormous, and there's absolutely no chance you're going to be looking at any of your workload today. Sergeant might be on your back, victims chasing you, and you just kind of feel helpless because there's just far too much than you're capable of doing, and with increasing amounts of work being given to you at the same time. It's the way I see it is like, imagine you're stood there with a 20 kilo barbell on your back, but every week it's getting 1 kilo heavier. And the problem is that most police officers are not getting stronger, and that weight just gets increasing every week, and officers are just collapsing into the ground, and they're done, they're burnt out, they're finished, and they can't go on. They're either going off with mental health, having to leave the job, long-term sick. And unfortunately, in the short or long term, there's nothing I can see that's going to happen that is going to make policing any better. And so I think ultimately it falls down to officers to take the onus themselves and make sure that they are better prepared to deal with the stresses of the job. I want to give you a quote by Marcus Aurelius, who's a famous Stoic philosopher, and roughly translated from one of his books called Meditations. And it talks about how a weak fire, when wood is placed upon it, will go out. But a strong fire will take the wood, turn it into fuel, and rise bigger and stronger than it was before. And I think with a lot of police officers, when they are getting increasing amounts of stress, because they are kind of weak-minded potentially, and that's not criticism, it's easily done, weaker body, these additional stresses just plow them down into the ground because they're not physically or mentally strong enough to deal with the increasing stress put on them. However, if you do have a stronger mind, you do have a stronger body, you can deal with these stresses much more easier. Your benchmark for what is difficult is raised, and your capacity to deal with problems becomes increased as well. So for me, one of the biggest issues that police officers have now is whenever they get either bored or tired or stressed, you're at work, you're doing a case file, you know, oh, this is boring. You get your phone and you start doom scrolling, and you're conditioning yourself that anytime something becomes difficult or challenging, you just have to seek out something to make you feel better. Whereas that's quite the inverse of getting stronger. It's actually making yourself weaker because you'll have a complete inability to deal with difficult things. It's the same with food. Oh, I'm bored, I want to eat. Oh, I'm stressed, I want to eat. It's just constantly looking for ways out that are very much short-term fixes to what is fundamentally a very long-term problem. And the more you do that, the more you condition, dealing with a difficult job becomes way harder because you're kind of stuck in that moment dealing with something where the option to go on your phone isn't there. But because you're so out of practice of dealing with difficult things, it seems way harder than it needs to be. For example, if I said to go, like, you hadn't run for a year, and I said go and run a kilometre, it'd probably be quite difficult. But if you regularly went for a couple of runs a week, that 1 kilometre would be so easy. And it's the same with mindset, it's the same with physical strength. Just a little bit of practice every so often makes a massive difference to your ability to be able to deal with things when they do crop up. And unfortunately now a lot of officers are becoming even kind of worse in a physical state, because the bleep test by most constabularies is now 3.7. 5.4 was a joke. 5.4 is below what an officer should be able to do. It's now 3.7, and it just shows that there's a decreasing desire by the constabularies for officers to be in better shape. It then makes it even harder for officers who otherwise could have maybe scraped a 5.4, now don't need to do any preparation for it, when that was the only exercise they were getting in the first place. And that for me is just very symbolic of the decreasing state of officers' mental and physical health. And unfortunately I personally see increasing amounts of officers saying that they haven't got time to go to the gym, haven't got time to exercise. But I have some clients who genuinely exercise every single day. They're doing 10 to 12 hours of physical exercise. They're on response. They're doing 6 on 4 off shift patterns. If one of those lads or girls can do 12 hours of physical exercise a week, I'm pretty sure you can manage 3 sets of 30 minutes a week doing some intense exercise, either with some weights or with some cardio. It doesn't take a lot, and I think unfortunately a lot of people justify not doing anything by saying they haven't got time, when the reality is it's either a lack of inclination, it's a lack of personal pride, it's a lack of understanding. But the problem is you're only lying to yourself, and saying that you haven't got the time is just exacerbating the problem. And when it comes to improving mindset, I was reading meta-analysis that showed that exercise, which includes walking, jogging and strength training, is all over twice as effective at decreasing symptoms of depression and anxiety as selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, which are essentially antidepressants, drugs that make you artificially feel better. And again, with diet as well, a lot of police officers are going to get meal deals. They're getting McDonald's, they're getting Subways, Greggs, crappy coffees from Starbucks, Costa, etc. These are all ultra-processed foods. And another meta-analysis is essentially a look at a number of studies to make sure that they are getting the biggest overall review of the data. And it takes out a lot of the maybe factors that might throw one off. If you review it from all in one go, you get much more accurate figures. And it showed that for every 10% increase in ultra-processed food in your diet, in terms of calories, so let's say, for example, you were eating 3,000 calories or 2,000 calories a day, and then you increase your ultra-processed food intake by 10%, so that would be an extra 200 calories of those will be coming from ultra-processed food, which is like junk food. There is an 11% increase in your propensity to get depressive symptoms. So if you've got 100% diet, like 100% increase in the amount of ultra-processed food you're eating, the likelihood of you getting depression is very high. And for me, the food aspect and the training aspect are very closely linked. Humans, you'll probably hear me say this a lot, and I'll keep saying it, humans have barely evolved in the last 90,000 years. They have evolved to do 15, 20,000 steps a day. They have evolved to do hard physical work. They have evolved to eat foods that come directly from the ground or an animal or a tree. That's how our bodies have adapted. They've grown, they've evolved to be able to consume those foods and work properly, to be able to survive. Nowadays, too many people are not moving properly. They're doing 2,000 to 3,000, 4,000 steps a day. They're not doing any physical exercise. They're spending all day inside. Their circadian rhythm's out of sync. And the foods that they're eating are not foods that are designed to be consumed by humans. And then it's no wonder that bodies are not working correctly. People feel shit. People feel lacking energy. People feel unhappy. And then they'll go to the things that are actually making them more unhappy in the long run, but they're like the short-term solution. So I'll have a chocolate bar to make myself feel better. That's just exacerbated the problem. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't know this, and some people do, but they choose not to take any action. And fundamentally, if you want to live and be happy and be a police officer, you've seen that the constabularies are doing nothing for you. It falls to you to make the change. It falls to you to take action. And if you don't, you probably won't last. And that is the truth of the matter. It comes down to you to make those changes. So hopefully you've learned something from this video. If you found it useful, please give it a like and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. I'll see you guys next week.